Hi guys, I'm Joe and this is A Cool Dry Place. So something that I would like to work on is making this bandsaw a little bit better. It has been a real trooper for me. It's got enough power. I think I've upgraded a few things here and there. I know I've put new blocks in it. I think I upgraded the spring in the back. But it has been a real trooper, but there's just two things about it that have been lacking from day one. And that is the table size. It sucks. It's 14.5 inches square, basically a square foot, and it's okay, but it can be better. And I did kind of have a fix on this that you guys might see in some videos. It was really just dead simple. It was a piece of 1/2 inch MDF that I think it came out to about here, so it's probably about 2 feet from the blade on the right side. And then it just basically filled in the gap over here to the column. I think it went, that's just a hair past in the front here. And that was okay. You know, it wasn't great. It would kind of bind up if you ever try to pull it back out again, because the sawdust and stuff would get in the kerf back here, because I really just had, I had a guide rail in here that would index the miter slot, so it would always kind of go back in the same spot. But it just wasn't that, and sometimes this was really a lot of fun. Sometimes as you'd be working on something and the table would kind of flip, like if you had too much weight out here or you tried to pull back out of a piece and the table would drag with it, that sometimes would get you a little going. And I had this fence on it. This is the fence that came originally to me, anyway, with the bandsaw. It's an okay fence. It has there was a pipe that went through here that would mount onto the table, and it would clamp down with this. It was pretty good. There was a little bit of flex in it though, and I didn't have a way to secure this down without clamps. So like if I was doing something kind of heavy, like resawing, you want a little more pressure against the fence. I didn't have a real good way to do that, at least not without going and getting clamps and stuff. So this was kind of out. This was just to, I guess, tide me through until I could come up with a better idea and a better solution. And part of that solution was actually getting my 8-inch table saw to be in a better place. Yeah, say hello to my little 8-inch Homecraft table saw. This is a Delta product. It's really pretty slick. This was originally a combination machine, so it had the 8-inch table saw. Over here on this side, it would have had the 4-inch jointer. That thing was really kind of small. It was a 4-inch cutter head, and I think it was, with both beds combined, I think it was only like 26, 28 inches long. Not really that useful. It was pretty cool. It was really pretty cool, and it worked fine, but the size just wasn't quite there. And it did have a neat base too, with these foot activated levers that would raise the whole base up with the machine, and you could kind of move it around. That did not perform very well. I don't think that was very cool. But guys, this table saw is deceptively awesome. It is all steel. It is cast iron trinions, rack and pinion, all that stuff is cast iron. Of course, the table's cast iron. And aluminum hand wheels, and the throat plate's aluminum. I have upgraded this a lot. I think I'm kind of done upgrading. I'm not really the saw, but I made the whole base. This whole thing is modular. These legs this gray part here is all wood, and will slide up out of those legs once you take the top off. And I just added this fence a little while ago. This is a Delta T30, if I recall correctly. It's kind of based on the Biesmeyer systems, so it's basically kind of a weaker version of one of the Biesmeyer fences that were out. Nice little saw. It really has been a trooper. But this saw is, because it has the nice luxury Delta T30 fence on here, is giving up its fence. So this table saw originally had this. And this is actually a nice little fence. It's not great. It certainly isn't a Biesmeyer, but it'll work. And it'll work on the bandsaw. It'll actually bolt right in. There's these slotted holes here. It will actually bolt right into the table. It's pretty cool. Get you in here closer so you can see. It has a rack and pinion to do the micro adjustment. So you can actually use that to move the fence on the rail just a little bit. You want to dial it in. And it has a clamp back here to be able to clamp the outside of the fence down as well. So if you want to put some real pressure on it like when I'm resawing, it should work out a little bit better. So let's look at this a little bit closer on the bandsaw. All right, and here we are at the bandsaw with the donor fence from the 8-inch table saw. So this is going to drive some of the dimensions of our table. Obviously, I don't want to modify this, okay? So I'm going to probably cut the rails down a little bit, the metal rails in the front and the back, because I don't think our table is going to be that big. But I don't want to modify this part at all. I don't want to modify the actual fence. So I don't want to cut that down. I do believe Delta sold a shorter version, like Ford bandsaws, but I don't have that version, and I'm not going to wait around to find it. And actually, I want the longer one anyway. So this is going to drive that dimension. So we want to fill in the space here, and we want to fill in the space here to where that metal rail would mount in the back. And then, of course, whatever this is, if we can get this filled in something, close to the column, allow enough for clearance, that'd be great. But 5.5 or so inches over here, and we'll just duplicate that over here. So that's kind of where we're going to go, or where we're going to start with, is that this is going to be our driver for some of our dimensions. And I have some wood that I think we could use for this project. So let's get over to the bench and take a look at that. Oh, this is the wood we're going to be using. So this is red oak that, it's finished on the two edges. Actually has a stain and a finish on here. This started life as a baseboard or casing or something. I'm not quite sure what it was. I got it from a friend of mine because they couldn't use it in the project that they had intended to use it on. Maybe it was leftovers. I'm not quite sure. I've had it for a number of years. But just a little while ago, I planed it down on both sides to get rid of, because one side had the finish on it, and the other side had just a bunch of fingerprints from the finisher. So this is the wood we're going to be using. The first step that I want to do right now today is the front and back rails are going to be kind of laminated. I guess they're going to be laminated. So I'm going to use, what I want to do is cut up a total of 6 pieces of this wood here that will be, these are 9 feet long, so I'm just going to make 3 out of each. So I'll get 3 36-inch lengths out of these. So I want to make a front and a back with 3 laminations each that we'll use for the front and back rails. Okay, folks, we cut 2 boards to get 3 pieces out of each board to 36, or pretty darn close. One of them came up a little bit short. That's fine. So what I would like to, and by the way, these are 11/16 inch thick. So they were 3/4 inches thick, but because I had to plane off a little bit on both sides to get the stain off, they're now 11/16. So, and the reason we're kind of going that thick is that we're going to have enough height to be able to hit our mounting holes that are already pre-drilled, they're already in the table and threaded too. And it will provide enough strength then too for anything that we're going to be putting on the table. So, and attach the fence to it as well. So let's get some glue on these things so that they can cook. Okay guys, put down a liberal amount of glue, but we also don't want to get carried away on it. Perfect. Lay this guy on top. So let's make sure there's no dust here, or wood shavings or something like that. So there you have it. This is going to be one of the rails. I'm just going to kind of line that up. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other rail right on top of this here. So I'm going to set, this is the top one for my other rail. I'm going to set that off. Set that off. We're going to do the bottom one first. This way, if I do them all together, I'll to use my clamps a little more efficiently. I don't have a whole bunch of clamps like some folks. I do wish I had a few more clamps, but gotta work with what you have. All right, those are all reasonably lined up. We're going to do a little better job of that once we get some clamps. So I'm going to let this cook for at least a day, maybe a little bit more in these clamps, because I do want this to be very nice and solid when we bring it out, because we're going to be doing some more machining to this. Well, she bogged down a little bit, but she handled it. And I'll mention that's not a hook, or a rip blade. I think that's 40 teeth or so. That's alternate tooth bevel. Not the best for ripping boards. It's your general all-purpose blade. All right, now let's get back over to the bench and figure out how all this is going to come together. Hey, all right, so instead of going to the bench, I decided to come over here to the back of the table saw where we have a little more room to lay everything out. So we have the fence that we're going to use now in place, and I kind of maxed it out a little bit so that, separated everything about as far as it will separate so we can get an idea of what we need to cut I'm going to call them rails. There's going to be, the rail over here that will fill in the space between the cast iron that will probably be in about this spot here actually I do have that mark here. This is going to be the start of the cast iron right here, if you can see that mark. So I'm going to be cutting off some of this and some of that. There's kind of a line here towards the end, say about 3 or 4 inches from the ends of the boards of our wood rails. That's going to be approximately where we cut the wood rails. And I'm not going to cut this stuff yet. I want to make sure that all lays out. That's kind of why we're doing this here. But this is where I think we're going to be cutting the front and back rails. And this is where I believe the cast iron is going to start. And this is where I believe the cast iron is going to stop, right over here. So this should give us about 5.5 inches of wood we need to fill in over here. And ditto over here on this side. Have some of this rail extend, at least the front rail, perhaps not the back rail, but at least on the front rail, I want to have some of this wood extend. I want to be able to have the metal fence, go all the way over to the column of the bandsaw, kind of when I'm not using it, so that it's out of the way. And so if we have the wood rail extend past it, we'll have a place for the metal rail to also be. I don't know, it kind of makes sense in my mind. It's what I have done on most of my table saws that have had a T-style fence like this, like the Biesmeyer fences. But we also have to get a critical measurement here, and that's what we think that we need to make these, not these rails, cut these rails to, but what I need to have those rails exposed to, because I believe we're going to, on this side here, I'm thinking to actually do like a mortise and tenon, probably have the tenons extend into the front and back rails about 1.25 inches on both sides. This one over here, though, needs to be removable. So what I'm thinking to do, so we could get the blade out, because if you recall, on the Delta bandsaws like I have, that blade, to change the blades, it comes out through the side of the cast iron table. So what I think I'm going to do is have this wood rail be removable, just slot it in, probably not deeper than 1/2 inch into the front and back wood rails. That will allow that board to just slide out, change the blade, slide it back in again. That's what I'm thinking. So at any rate, I believe that what I came up with is that this here should probably be, let's just round it down a little bit. It's what I have here for a measurement is like a 32nd under 11.5. almost 7/16. So I think we're going to round it down to 11 3/8 is what I want to have, you know, these rails exposed. So this one's going to be a little bit longer. I'm not super good at doing math in my head, but it's going to be, you know, 1.5 inches plus 1.5 inches. And this one, I have to decide here, but I think we're probably going to shoot for a little less than 1/2 inch. Maybe we'll shoot for just straight on 1/2 inch, but probably less than 1/2 inch right here. I don't want to have a lot of friction on this piece so that it will be able to slide in and out. And it already will have a little bit of friction because it's going to be a 5.5 inch wide board, or pretty damn close to 5.5 inches. And actually, I kind of thought about this too. If it's a little bit loose, I don't mind that. But we might have to maybe embed some magnets on the side of the board or something like that so that it doesn't travel out when you're using this, when you're using the bandsaw. Oh, and also, I went ahead here too on the back side. Now this is not a perfect measurement or perfect indicator yet, but you get kind of an idea. If I flip this around here, this is roughly, and I decided to just center this. I think it's just going to make my life a whole lot easier if we just center our new auxiliary table on top of the cast iron table front to back. So this is not gospel, but this is probably going to give us a good idea of what we're going to cut this rail out to. I just traced it on the, up from the back, traced the cast iron table onto this rail so we get kind of a close idea. So you see this line here that mimics the curve. That's the boss that we're talking about, where this is the milled area on the cast iron table, same over here. And then it comes back into the sand casting again. I know there's two lines here. Kind of try to forget about this one that's closest towards me here, because that's going to get, that was just so that I get an idea of what my flat surfaces are. Because we are mounting these front and back rails through the already threaded and drilled holes, drilled and threaded holes in the cast iron table right here. So I want to have those be right. But at any rate, that's the interior line, the line that's on this side over here. I don't know if you can see this real well, it's just a pencil line. But that's an idea where we're going to cut this rail to here, and then the other boss, and then the other sand cast part over here of the table. It got a little sloppy here where the miter slot is at, but that's fine. But like I said, this is not gospel. We're going to erase that and then kind of do it over again when we have this thing a little more fabricated. So, all right, let's cut up our pieces for here and for here, and then we'll get an idea of what we're going to do for the joinery, how we're going to make that. Okay, I have the joinery lines well enough anyway laid out for our two shorter pieces here. So this is the one that's going to have the 1.25 inch tenons on both sides, and this is the one that's going to have only the 1/2 inch tenons on both sides. So that should be good. I fully intend that we'll probably have to clean this up a little bit with some hand tools, you know, shoulder plane or whatever, over on the bench, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd rather have it be a little bit oversized at this point, and then have to clean it up with the hand tools. So let's go ahead and do the 4 cuts on this that we need to do. I think that should be all right. We'll keep the blade the same, but I'm going to alter this dimension here where we engage with the blade. That ought to be good. Let's move this over. Let's give that a cut. All right, we have those now, so we're going to move on to cutting off the bulk of our waste on this surface here. So looking to kind of eliminate the bulk of that right now. I have a tall fence. We'll put that on. All right, we have the tall fence here now. So we have this set up so it's going to leave just a little bit of that line. I don't know if you can quite see it, but there's a little bit of a line down here. And we want to leave just, I'm going to leave just a little bit of that so that I can do some handwork so I can ensure that that's somewhat tight fit here. But this should be getting us pretty darn close to what it's going to be in the end. So, and the height I have right too, so it's going to have, the blade should be coming up just to about the top of whatever we want to call this piece. It shouldn't be engaging in the rest of the board at all. In fact, this might actually be kind of just hanging on by a thread once it goes through the table saw here. This is the longer of the two shorter ones. That makes sense. This is the one that's going to actually have the true mortise for the tenon to stick into, the 1.25 inch tenons here. I want to step that back a little bit, remove 3/4 inch on either side of this tenon here. It doesn't have to be accurate, it just needs to be gone. So I'm just going to zing it off real quick with the bandsaw. All right. All right, we got that kind of done now for the tenons. They're not fit. We haven't done any handwork yet, of course. So I think we're going to, the next step here is to cut the mortises, I think, for this one here. We probably could do this one, but this one isn't quite as critical, so I'd rather kind of knock out the thing that's critical. So here's my thought, guys. Let me see, let me know if you think that this is, if we're on the right course here. So this is about where the cast iron is going to come in on the left-hand side of this guy here. And this is about where it's going to come out. I'm hoping to not cut these at all or have to, like, say, scribe them to the cast iron. I'm hoping that they will just butt up to it. But I'd rather not have a gap. So this one isn't really as critical because it's going to be a slot and it's going to be loose so that we can get that blade in and out. But this one is going to be fixed and glued and we won't be able to move it at all after it's all glued up and stuff. So I think what I want to do is have this creep into where I think the cast iron is going to be by probably about a 1/16, close to it. And we'll do our layout lines here for our mortise about like that. That way, if we have to do a little bit of scribe on this, we will, but we'll still be keeping most of what I want over here for a table. So currently we're at 5 7/16. So I think that will be fine. At this point, I'm going to close out the video and we'll come back to this tomorrow and we'll set up the mortiser to tackle the mortises for this side bit over here. So please tune in for the next video on this.